All right, and we're back, episode 6 of the Chroncast. For those of you who are new, I'm Ryan. I'm joined by Alex. Alex, say hi.
Hi.
Alex is my co-head of Canucks Chronicles, I guess. He runs the Instagram and writes most of the articles. I run the Twitter, and we are also joined by producer Zach. Zach, say hi.
Good evening, everybody.
Well, alrighty then. Zach writes the occasional article for us and is also there for moral support and the entire production of the Chroncast. All right, so let's get into it. Canucks' most recent game, a 3-2 win over the Anaheim Ducks in the first Canucks Chronicles business meeting. Alex, what are your thoughts on the game?
First of all, just hell of an atmosphere in Rogers Arena for a 12:30 puck drop. Like, you don't expect people to be that into a game that starts that early, but just the spirit going around the Canucks right now, especially after clinching a playoff spot, is incredible. Bit of a rough game at certain points. Looked a little sloppy, especially in that third period where they blew the 2-goal lead, but what a game from Dakota Joshua more than anyone.
Yeah, Dakota Joshua, what a good time to have it too. Like right going into the playoffs, contract year. That's the exact type of performance you want to see from him, especially if you're his agent. I think he's definitely someone who's going to be getting a lot of money next year, whether or not it's with the Canucks, but ideally with the Canucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Rick Dhaliwal tweeted out during the game that Jesus Christ, I can't speak right now, that Dakota Joshua's agent must be doing cartwheels after that performance, and you have to think what that next contract is going to look like for him. Like you said, I'm hoping it's with the Canucks, but I do wonder if it's going to be something we can afford or not, given the number of other players we have to re-sign.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think after Ronak, re-upping Joshua is probably among the top priorities of the team, or at least I would hope. I think it was Sportsnet 650 that I was listening to in the Rogers Arena washroom at intermission that was talking about $13 million contract over the course of 4 years being very much in the picture for Joshua. If I'm Vancouver, I'm not sure I've got the room for that. As much as I like to say I'm comfortable with it, I think getting him down below a $4 million AAV is pretty crucial for the Canucks cap management.
Yeah, and especially with the number of defensive free agents we have at this point, I believe four of our defensemen are not under contract for next year as it stands. I don't know that you could allocate quite that much to signing one winger, especially a guy who has spent most of his time here in the bottom or middle six. But if there is a way to get Joshua back, I'm all for it. Him and Bluger, especially, of our forward free agents, are the guys where I really want to see the effort made to try to make sure we can keep them in Vancouver if that can be done at a reasonable price.
Yeah, and I mean, just saying that having a guy in the middle bottom six can lessen his importance to the team. I mean, it's pretty visible how having Joshua in the lineup makes this team better. He provides a massive spark. I guess a good comparable that I see for Joshua is Brandon Hagel and what he brings to Tampa Bay. Because the way I see it, Hagel is, he's not one of their star players, right? Like he's by no means anywhere near like Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, consistent top six, but he's a guy that you can rely on in the middle six that they've since locked up, I believe, for a few years. And that's something that would be really helpful to have if we are serious about contending for cups over the next few years.
Yeah, totally. And just another player I want to spotlight, he's been talked about with Dakota Joshua out this year, was Connor Garland. They were on separate lines this game, unlike they've been for most of the season, but he's another player who's just been such a spark plug this year, and it's great to see the bounce back here, especially with the trade rumors that were happening throughout the offseason and early portion of the season. Great to see from Connor.
Yeah, no, it's such a relief seeing him because Connor Garland is a player that I've wanted to support and believe in since he got to Vancouver. He's a player who I was very high on, especially when they made the trade, and I was really excited about him coming to Vancouver at that point. And seeing that his potential is starting to actualize, not necessarily as like a star offensive player, but more like an energy guy who provides a lot of leadership in the way that he plays. Seeing that start to pay off for him makes me pretty happy.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite players to watch on this team every game. He has been for years, even when the production or the value wasn't necessarily there in him as a player, but seeing it now come to fruition fully this year, he's just so much fun to watch every night.
Yeah, and I'm going to shift the subject a little bit, but another player who's been, I would say not overachieving, but someone who's definitely exceeded my expectations is Casey DeSmith, and how he's stepped up since Demko got hurt. I know people will come back at me and say, like, oh, well, look at their record since Demko went down. I don't really think that their record reflects how DeSmith has been playing. I think DeSmith has been more than solid in most of his performances across this season. I think the record shows more a difference in how the team's been playing. And you definitely see that in that Anaheim game, because neither of those goals were Casey DeSmith's fault. But at the same time, you go into the third period against the Ducks up 2-0, and within like a couple short plays, it's tied.
Yeah. No, I definitely
continue.
Yeah, DeSmith has really. I know there will, like you said, be people who point out our record hasn't been great in that span, but I think that's been much more of an offensive concern than a defensive concern. I think I saw a stat earlier during the month of March. We were one of the worst offensive teams in the league at certain points, whereas defensively we were among the best, and this was without Thatcher Demko in net. So that really speaks volumes of not only DeSmith, but of how much our defense has changed since last year, where we had one of the worst defenses I've ever seen an NHL team ice sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, I think in terms of how far the defensive core has come, like it's definitely invaluable to the team how well they've been playing, especially guys like Carson Soucy and Ian Cole, who weren't thought to be significant additions, but have since become impact players.
Yeah,
I know that this was something that had us low in a lot of power rankings and NHL discussion, and so they've definitely exceeded everybody's expectations as well.
Yeah, and in addition to that, the improved performances from Noah Juleson and Tyler Myers has been something really notable. Like, even this season at points, they looked really rocky, but lately they've been quite solid as players. You really need that from these guys.
And I guess seeing the game in person, I had my first Canucks game in person was a couple years ago against Tampa Bay. I do believe the Canucks lost that game. I think it was 2-1. But I remember I was sitting pretty close to the ice, and I remember watching Luke Shen just crunch guys. And since that, he had become one of my favorite players to watch, just like as a Canuck, like having those physical defensemen has been. Alex, you all right?
What? Yeah.
Yeah, your mic's just a little crackly. But yeah, I just the way Shen's been playing, or the way Shen played, definitely made him like one of my favorite players and a fan favorite as well. And I think seeing the game in person on Sunday, Juleson had been doing a lot of the same stuff. And yeah, I'm starting to really like watching Noah Juleson play since seeing that game on Sunday.
Yeah, he's been a fun surprise this year. I really like the physicality we've gotten from him. He's been a solid penalty killer. He's still makes the occasional mistake, but it's a lot more forgivable when you get as much good play as we've gotten out of him lately.
Yeah. All right. And I guess we don't really have much else to talk about with how people have been playing, but I guess the Canucks are now clinched, and I guess people are excited to finally watch playoff hockey in Rogers Arena. I know I personally cannot afford to watch hockey in Rogers Arena in the playoffs, but I will be standing outside of it, assuming that they have a similar watch party to what they have had in Toronto. So yeah, what can fans expect from this, Alex?
Well, like you, I cannot afford playoff tickets at the moment, but knowing that the Canucks have not had a home playoff game at Rogers Arena in close to a decade, round 1, game 1 especially, I'm expecting Rogers Arena to be as loud as anyone has ever heard it. I think this is going to be just electric atmosphere in there, and what I'm really hoping to hear is the sounds of Where the Streets Have No Name playing as the Canucks are getting ready to take the ice.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It would be awesome to hear it, but at the same time, like as a franchise, like they can't keep clinging on to those glory days. I think, the direction the teams went in, like they never went back to Holiday as their goal song, despite people wanting that from them. I can't see them going back. I think that they'll eventually pick something else, and if that song has the same effect that Where the Streets Have No Name had on that 2011 team, it'll be looked back on in 10 years when the Canucks are getting ready to compete for playoffs again. As a, the same type of song, same type of memorable intro.
Yeah, my thought process on this is, at the moment, the Canucks really don't have a signature kind of intro song that the fans really cling to. Whereas with Where the Streets Have No Name, you still have that. And I think in a game where you are going to need the fans as energized as possible, having been at a few games in recent years where they've brought it back just for special occasions, that song still really has the ability to get Rogers Arena going and get the fans pumping. So I'm kind of hoping they bring it back for the playoffs, just because I think they owe it to the players more than anything to try to get that building as loud as possible and create the best home ice advantage they can.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it did move me to tears when they did the Sedin retirement and they walked out to that.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll have to see. I think just having hockey in Rogers Arena in the playoffs will get people going regardless. But I'm not disagreeing that it would be a nice touch. I just don't think that that's the direction the team will want to head in.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the idea of holiday too, for years I have been on the bring back holiday train, but I think recently, in my opinion, I started to shift there. I don't know if this is the hot take or not, to the point where I would say Don't You Forget About Me definitely feels like it should be staying around as the goal song for quite a while still, until it eventually does get stale, which will likely happen at some point. But having been in Rogers Arena for a few big games this year, seeing the effect that song has on the fans and getting people going, I think that should stick around for quite a while.
Yeah, and I think when you consider that, I think that if the team is to pick a new walkout song for the playoffs, then it's not something to hang your head over if it's not Where the Streets Have No Name. I also like to think about Ain't Talking About Love by Eddie Van Halen. It was our goal song during that bubble year. And just, that I have fond memories when I hear that song. Like, it's definitely not the biggest deal, because if they do pick a new song, it'll end up being just as memorable in a few years' time. All right. Final Canucks topic. We have decided over the last week or so that we wanted to do blind rankings. This is something that you might have seen a little bit on the interwebs, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you might see it. Basically, I'm going to give Alex a list of 5 players, and Zach is going to give me a list of 5 players, and then Alex is going to give Zach a list of 5 players. They all have different categories, and you're supposed to rank them 1 to 5 without knowing who the next player is. So I'll kick it off. Alex, your topic is all-time Canucks, just in terms of their legacy.
All right, let's do this.
And your first player is Marcus Naslund.
Ooh. Okay, so thinking out loud here, Naslund, I think, is comfortably a top 5 greatest Canuck player of all time. The question is, do I want to give up some of the top spots earlier in case we get a Sedin or a Bure or someone mentioned? I'm going to take a little bit of a risk, and I'm going to put Naslund in the 2.
All right. Quinn Hughes.
I was afraid you were going to say that. Okay, Hughes. If we go off of potential, I would maybe even consider putting Quinn Hughes in the 1. I do think he has the potential to, when he retires, become the greatest Canuck of all time. However, that would be premature. He's very early in his career right now. I'm thinking 3 or 4. I'm going to go 4, which could age like milk.
4?
4.
Okay.
Based on that reaction, I do not like this.
So your third one is Alex Burrows.
5. I love Burrows, but I can't justify putting him above Quinn Hughes.
So your 1 and your 3 are currently open.
Oh god, I'm not going to like this, am I?
All right. So your fourth player is Hunter Shinkaruk.
God damn it. We're going to have to go 3 here.
Oh no.
Oh god, it gets worse, doesn't it?
All right.
Okay, wait.
Your final player.
Can I guess who you're going to say?
Yep.
I feel like I know you well enough to know that you're going to put Louis Eriksson in here.
Nope.
Oh, you went a different way with it.
All right, your final player and the greatest Canuck of the 5 is Mark Messier.
No! All right, ladies and
Alex.
gentlemen, I am here to announce my retirement from the Chroncast effective immediately. Goodbye.
I don't know how you didn't see that coming.
I thought you were going to save Louis for last, but then I just... Oh, man.
All right. Okay. Well, that's okay.
That's a fail.
And now I believe, Zach, it is time for you to do mine.
Yes, so my prompt was Jim Benning moves. So these can be trades,
Ooh.
signings, releases, anything.
Okay.
Ryan Gurvitz, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, the first maneuver from Jim Benning is the Jared McCann trade.
Am I ranking them in terms of how... am I ranking them as in 1 it being the worst or 5 being the worst?
1 will be the best one.
Okay, so for Jared McCann, I am going to put that in the 4.
So that is one of the worst moves possible.
Yes. For the Canucks, that trade was awful.
Your second maneuver from Jim Benning was the Oliver Ekman-Larsson trade in 2021.
I am going to put that in the 2.
Oh.
The 2, all right.
Really?
The 2, because we traded Dylan Guenther, and yes, we crippled ourselves by taking on Oliver Ekman-Larsson's contract, but we got Connor Garland out of that, and I would say he's been pretty integral for how the team has been playing.
Can I put out a hot take here?
Yep.
I might actually call that the single worst trade in Canucks history. Just because of how cap crippling it was, and it will still have repercussions years down the line because of the OEL buyout.
I mean, we traded Cam Neely.
Yep, I know.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah.
That's definitely an interesting take.
One that's going to have to play out over time, too, to see what the cap implications do, but just my take. I'm going to let you two get back to it.
Yeah, I'm putting the OEL trade in the 2.
So you have taken number 2 and number 4 out of the equation so far.
Correct.
The third maneuver is Thatcher Demko's contract extension. 5 years at $5 million average annual value.
I am putting that in the 1.
The 1.
Yeah.
He is a Vezina nominee this year for sure, and without a doubt, the future of the Canucks goaltending corps.
All right. Maneuver number 4 is the Louis Eriksson contract signing.
I am going to put that in the 3. My goat, but I have nowhere else higher to put him.
And
I own his jersey. I own his jersey. He is genuinely I was watching that game when they beat Boston 9-2. I was watching it at a party, ignoring everybody else because Louis Eriksson had just scored a goal.
Fair enough.
All right, continue. The 5th and final.
The 5th and final Jim Benning maneuver that you are blind ranking, Ryan Gurvitz, is the drafting of Jack Rathbone.
I thought you were going to say Elias Pettersson. Not going to lie.
I probably should have in hindsight.
Yeah. Honestly, that's a pretty good list, I would say. Other than, I mean, like the Rathbone trade, the drafting of Jack Rathbone didn't really do anything.
I'd maybe put that in 2 just because it's like the other ones you have ahead of it, apart from the Demko signing, all had some negative implications, and this was just kind of a net neutral.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you put it in 5, it's not that bad. It's a nothing deal.
It's like the least impactful out of any of them.
Yeah.
All right.
Zach, you ready for this?
No.
Well, that's too bad. Zach will be ranking tough guys / enforcers in Canucks history, which will lead us into the Zach Mason Combat Corner after this. Zach, your first player is Zach McEwen. Your namesake, fairly recent Canuck. Namesake
maybe
was
he's
not
being
the right
hindered
word to use
by
there.
recency, but I'm going to put him 4.
4?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't like the tone you said that with. That's going to be a mistake, isn't it?
We'll see. The next one. Talked about already on this podcast. Mr. Dakota Joshua.
Let's go number 3.
Okay. Yeah. Next on the list. Mr. Kevin Bieksa.
This is going to be a horrible mistake, but he is number 2.
Number 2.
So I have 1 and 5 left available.
Do you want to leave him at 2? I'm going to give you the option to move that.
You know what? I'm here exclusively for vibes. I'm going to put him at number 5.
Okay. Kevin Bieksa in the 5.
It's one of the choices of all time.
Your next one. The man, the myth, the legend, the late Gino Ojic.
1.
There is
Good
only
choice.
one place for Gino, and it is number 1.
Even I know that,
So,
don't worry.
The second greatest tough guy in Canucks history is Raffi Torres.
Hell yeah!
Okay.
You know?
That's
I think
actually
you're
a
gonna go worse
very
than that.
solid list.
So-
I think that's a very solid list,
Apart
actually.
from me deciding to be mean and trying to maneuver you out of BX at 2, if we had left BX at 2, I think you've aced this. Joshua, there's maybe an argument that he's less of a tough guy and more of just a power forward who is also tough. But I'm not going to be the one to make that argument. I think you've done well here.
If I heard Raffi Torres if this was me and you said Raffi Torres is the first guy, I'm putting him in the 1. Because I'm completely like forgetting about everybody else in that moment, and Raffi Torres would have ended up in the 1 for me. But no, yeah, I think that's a very solid list.
I think you two
Other
both
than
did
Zach-
quite well, and then my list also happened.
Yeah, Mark Messier is a better Canuck than Marcus Naslund and Quinn Hughes and Alex Burrows. And Hunter Shinkaruk is a better Canuck than Quinn Hughes and Alex Burrows.
Yeah, we're going to need to revisit this segment at some point so I can redeem myself. But that was fun.
I'm making your list again the next time, just so you know.
Oh, God.
All right,
Can I have Zach make it next time?
we are going to do something different, as Zach has just done his list. We are going to go into the Zach Mason Combat Corner now, and then we are going to move into the other sports topics, so that those of you who like combat sports can sign off after this.
Or
All right,
alternatively, enjoy our brilliant banter.
So they can sign off after this. All right. Zach, are you ready to go?
I believe I am, yes.
All right. Not this coming weekend, but the one after that, we have UFC 300 to enjoy.
We do.
What do you have to say about the card?
It's almost a weird thing of opposites. Like it's a very deep card. There's a lot of legitimate contenders who are in spots where you don't expect legitimate contenders to be in terms of placement.
Yes.
But it's also somehow been underwhelming despite that. Like for the past 2 years-ish, there's been a lot of, this is going to be the biggest card of all time. Every single fight's going to be great. And then they kind of have a slightly underwhelming main event in Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Which, like, they're both world-class fighters. Infinitely better than I'll ever be. But it's not exactly the marquee of marquees you'd expect to be in this spot.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if you could go into any of the kind of main fights on that main card and talk about what you might think is going to happen in some of those.
I think for the main event, since I've already started touching on it, I'm going to favor Alex Pereira because he is probably the most feared striker in the UFC right now. Like he's a 2-weight Glory Kickboxing World Champion, which is the premier kickboxing organization on earth. He, in 11 MMA fights, he is a 2-weight UFC World Champion.
Yep.
He does have weakness in the ground game, like Israel Adesanya seemed to take him down pretty easily. But if I'm to take Jamal Hill at his word and what he's been saying in interviews, I don't think he has much interest in going to the ground, which could end very badly with someone like Alex Pereira. And if you want some proof of that, you can just ask Sean Strickland.
And I'm just wondering, I've seen Bo Nickel is on the main card, while some other former and recent champions are not. Could we go into why that is? Is there a reason for this, or is Dana just lost it?
I think there's this weird, they're trying to make Bo Nickel, so for those who don't know, is a multiple-time collegiate national champion wrestler and 2020 Olympian, I believe.
Yes.
So he's probably one of the best bases you can have for mixed martial arts. And I think the UFC are very much trying to make him into like their new golden goose of the future.
Yeah.
Because he's and he's only 25 right now. So if they have basically every fight he has in the UFC in 2-3 years, he could be the guy at middleweight who you can build around. But it's still very interesting to have him in an incredibly prominent spot like that, especially with like former world champions like Yuri Prochazka and Aljamain Sterling underneath him.
Yeah, it's certainly an odd decision. Moving on from 300, upcoming we have decently big boxing match between Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia. What do you have to say about this fight?
I'm going to have to tread my words carefully here, because on paper, the fight should be very interesting because it's quite literally a boxer versus a puncher matchup. Like Devin Haney is almost infamous for his pillow-fistedness, and Ryan Garcia is technically lacking, to put it nicely. Like, you'll see plenty of defensive flaws throughout his fights, like hands down when they shouldn't be, very blitzing combination punches. So I'd favor Haney regardless of anything that happens outside of the fight. The problem is what's happening outside of the fight is almost uncomfortably overshadowing everything else, because Ryan Garcia, he's been very open about mental health struggles, and as someone who's had similar ones, I can respect that, because it's not exactly the most welcoming sport to have issues like that, because people make fun of you for backing out, for quitting. But at a certain point now, is Alex okay?
Yeah, keep talking.
Okay. Yeah, so if you look on his social media posts, it's very erratic. It's not the social media post of someone who is locked into quite possibly the biggest fight of his career, which he desperately needs to be, because it's a lot harder there's a lot more consequences to be ill-prepared in a combat sport than, say, a hockey or a soccer or something, because in a hockey or soccer, you can kind of just have one bad game and maybe get benched while you get back into shape. In boxing, if you have an exceptionally bad camp, there is legitimately a chance you don't wake up. So I'm not sure how comfortable I am with this fight being sanctioned to happen in the first place, because even if all this seeming to unravel at the seams is I'm trying very carefully to keep my words here. Even if it's all for promotion, I don't know if people should be comfortable taking the risk of this being for promotion. So I still feel uncomfortable with the fight going ahead.
All right, and now I'm gonna budge in and ask you about the goalie fight that happened in the WHL this week.
Yeah, it's always goalie fights are like the unicorn of hockey, aren't they?
I mean, yeah, you get like one or two a year, and it's the best thing on the planet.
Yeah, I love how I've seen the video just before the podcast started recording. One of the coaches stands up on the bench and is screaming at the other one, and it's a 9-1 game, and this is all happening.
Yeah, that sounds about right for the CHL, to be honest.
Yep.
Yeah.
The CHL just operates on vibes and future stars.
My thing is, though, I believe in the CHL, fighting gets you ejected and warrants potentially suspension. So I wonder how out of hand things have to get for goalies to fight in that league. My favorite thing about the WHL, or not the WHL, but what am I saying? Sorry. About goalie fights is the fact that it's a penalty if a goalie skates across halfway during a game, but during a fight, they kind of have to skate across half to like instigate it. Like, they'll just wait at the red line for each other.
Yep.
And they'll just be like, "Yeah, come fight, let's go." And both goalies have to like meet in the middle of the ice so they don't get a penalty for crossing onto the other side.
But then they're so laser focused on the fight that's going on that one of them will cross over.
Yes. All right. Zach, Alex is currently not here. All right. Had a couple of technical difficulties, but we're back now. We're gonna just wrap up with the Zach Mason Combat Corner. So thank you, Zach. And now we are going to get into the remainder of the sports topic. So, Alex, we are going to talk about baseball, and I'm going to let you lead that because you're wearing a Yankees hat.
I am, because Juan Soto is the god of my religion. First of all, I'd just like to say how much joy watching the Yankees sweep the Astros in the opening series of the season was. Juan Soto is absolutely insane at baseball. Oswaldo Cabrera has become like the reincarnation of Babe Ruth temporarily, which I love. And Marcus Stroman is now one of my favorite players. I can see why Jays fans liked him so much. Jays fan, anything you would like to say about the start of the season?
Well, we are 2-3.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really competed in any of the games that we have lost. Our most recent game was a 10-0 no-hitter loss against the team that the Yankees just swept for the Astros' first win of the season. I haven't got many words other than this is exactly what I was expecting from the Blue Jays after the offseason that they had. And I think John Schneider, Ross Atkins, and Mark Shapiro are all on fast tracks to be out of jobs by the end of this season.
However, speaking of the offseason you had, maybe it was a stroke of luck that you didn't get Shohei Ohtani, given the new controversy surrounding him and his translator?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy about that.
I mean, like,
not the obviously very sad situation where a young man could be missing out on nearly $1 billion in contract money and probably more in NIL advertisement, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, just gotta wonder what are the odds of that happening.
Well, I mean, you can't really. Yeah, there's another joke there. I know what you were getting at. There's another joke there, but I don't think I can quite get to it. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It definitely saves me a little bit of frustration as a Jays fan. Although, if he did sign to the Jays and this happened, I'd be like, yeah, of course, because I'm a Jays fan. This is like, I deserve this somehow.
And it's important for us not to speculate too much too early. I know I made my joke, but we got to be careful about speculating this early. But just this is going to be insane to watch unfold as it happens, and I cannot wait for a few years down the line when we get like a 30 for 30 or something about this, because this no matter what comes of this is an insane set of circumstances that has happened.
Yeah, this would be fascinating if it was just like the 24th man on a major league roster, let alone the best player on
the face
Earth.
of the league. Yeah.
Yeah.
The man who just signed a $700 million contract might have done a bunch of illegal things. Like, we still don't know, but it's just... And, like, some of the memes about this have just been nuts. I loved the picture of spring training of him standing next to Mookie Betts, just what the jerseys created.
Ohtani Betts.
But, this has just been... just wild.
So baseball has been fun. It has also not been fun. It's mainly been fun if you're Alex and not as fun if you're me. Yeah... I don't know. It's not refreshing seeing the most like widely hated franchise in like North American sports do well. But then again, the two most hated teams in Major League Baseball, one of them is in my division and undefeated, and the other one just no-hit my team in a 10-0 loss. So I feel great, and it might be game 5 of 162, but I'm already mentally checked out. So let's talk about Canada going to Copa America.
God, what a terrible win.
Yeah. I love CONCACAF.
Only in CONCACAF.
CONCACAF is the only conference where bad teams win regularly.
Yeah. No, if you play better, it's genuinely probably worse for your odds of winning.
Yeah. And it's such a fascinating conference because you have Canada, the US, and Mexico, the World Cup hosts for a couple years down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And their stiffest competition within their group is probably Jamaica or Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And that game against Trinidad was just peak CONCACAF.
Oh, yeah. Me and Zach went downtown and watched this game with a couple of our friends. Former podcast guest mine, Zilberstein, and his co-host at the Canadian Soccer Source pod, Tobin Rootman, among them. And we were just we were happy after the result, but we were all just thinking, oh god, if that's what we're getting against Trinidad, our first group stage game is against Argentina. What is Messi going to do to our defense? I'm wearing a Messi shirt right now. For those not watching, this man is going to destroy Canada.
I think that the entire Argentinian 11 will post hat tricks, and we will lose 33-0.
Including Emiliano Martinez.
Yes.
He's just going to start rushing out of the net at some point when he gets bored.
At some point, they'll start letting him take penalties for it, because they'll keep getting them, and it'll just be funny.
Yeah, and honestly, with Martinez, it will be funny, because he just finds a way to find comedy in anything.
Yep. So
and the other thing I just want to point out about that game, little bit unfortunate, but Max Crepeau had quite a good game there for Canada. Shame it had to be him having it, but oh well, someone had to play well.
Yeah, well, that gives us a good segue into the next game we're going to talk about, because he didn't have too good of a game this week.
Much better.
And it was, if you are a Whitecaps fan, like the rest of us, you understand the frustration Max Crepeau caused us when he left after having his breakout season with the Whitecaps to go play for a rival team and the most hated team.
Refusing to show up to training camp too. Yes,
and the most hated team in MLS signed him, or one of them.
Probably most hated.
And certainly since leaving Vancouver, it's worth noting that since leaving Vancouver, he has played for 2 separate teams, and both of them have been rivals. So at this point, I have just started to think that, considering he's a Canadian national team goalkeeper, he could have probably got a contract somewhere else. He must be taking the piss. He must be.
If he's not, it's a hell of a coincidence at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had also said when he left that it was due to family reasons. Not wanting to, I guess, what was it? Something about, like,
he didn't really say much beyond family reasons. I've heard different stories.
There was a lot of speculation.
Yeah, we've also heard him change his reason multiple times, so I really don't buy the family reason things. I think it might have had to do with Mark DeSantos, but I don't want to get too deep into that.
And then he also ended up saying this past week after losing that it was about football reasons.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because he's now on the Portland Timbers, who have not made the playoffs in the last 2 years.
I think they made it 2 years ago and lost in the final.
I think that was 3 years ago.
3 years? 3 years ago, you're right. NYC.
But yeah, so the Whitecaps won 3-2. And just the supporter section was unreal. This is probably, honestly, the best Whitecaps atmosphere I have ever experienced.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. It's some of the loudest I've ever heard BC place. Excellent first half. Second half also happened, but we got the win, so Zach, anything you want to say about this game?
Yeah, I enjoyed the atmosphere from the supporter section, and also I appreciate the genius who put pictures of Crepeau in the urinals. I don't know who did that, but I just want you to know I love you.
Yeah, and it's actually worth noting that when I went in at the start of the game, they were in there, and when I came back, they had been removed. And then I believe someone else who was even smarter had spare copies of it and had replaced them. So,
thought of everything.
Definitely. There. Yeah, definitely a smart move. And also just shout out to those guys who were at the front of the section that shouted, like, Max Crepeau eats the buttons on his TV remote, among other varied insults.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, someone had tweeted that the Whitecaps were becoming the Millwall of MLS.
That is the highest honor you can bestow an MLS team.
Exactly. I can't tell if it was sarcastic. I'm fairly sure it was. But it's that's the goal, right?
Some people were apparently a little bit questioning of if fans were taking it too far with Crepeau, but really, like, heckling, booing him when he touches the ball, and the "it's all your fault" chant on the way out. That's nothing unheard of in any sport, especially soccer, with its very intense fan culture. So I don't think anything would take it too far.
For MLS, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, I mean, even by MLS, some of it's not too bad. Like, booing a guy when he has the ball is very commonplace in North America. It's like in hockey. When Brad Marchand touches the puck at Rogers Arena, to this day, he will get booed.
Yeah.
So it's nothing unheard of. It's not like, I don't know. I don't think it was too far. Also,
neither do I.
Want to mention from that game, talking about more what happened on the field than off it. What a game from Fafa Picault.
Oh yeah.
That guy, I didn't really know much about him when the Whitecaps signed him. This guy can play. This guy.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's
Yeah.
great. He's what we needed.
He really is.
I did like the contributions from pretty much everybody on the team.
Yeah.
I don't think that there was like one overarching inherently bad performance.
No, I think there were some bad moments from a few players, but I think everyone was at least like, a 6 out
Pulling
of
their
10
weight.
at the smallest. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it was a good welcome back for Vanni Sartini.
Yeah.
PR dream boy Vanni Sartini.
Yep.
Most quotable manager in MLS history, Vanni
The Mike
Sartini.
McDaniel of MLS.
Yeah, I guess.
Except Mike McDaniel's good at coaching too, but we don't need to get into that.
Yeah, we'll talk about how we use that phrasing after a loss. All right. So we've had some more technical difficulties, but we're back again. Sorry, Zach, for what's going on. But we were talking about, before we cut things out, we were talking about Caitlin Clark. So I guess we'll restart from there.
Yeah.
March Madness is going on, and this is probably, as Alex had said, this is probably the first time that a female player has been the standout star of March Madness.
Mhm.
And just, wow.
Yeah.
Like, one of the most dominant performances in March Madness history, in college basketball history.
Yeah. She's just, like, I'm not really a basketball fan. I don't know too much about the sport, but watching her play a couple games this tournament, she's just electric to watch. You can just tell you're watching something special when she's on the court.
Yeah, and I think a lot can be said about what this is doing for the growth of women's sports in the U.S. It's kind of different being from Canada when we have, like, Christine Sinclair, Marie-Philip Poulin, Haley Wickenheiser. We have a lot of like women in sports that are held in high regard. And I guess that can be accounted to the fact that maybe our men's teams in a lot of sports aren't as successful as the women's teams, soccer and rugby, for example. And so just seeing like women's basketball and women's sports in the US starting to develop more popularity, where there's sort of been like I know especially with basketball, there's been a stigma about the product just not being as good as the men. And I think between Caitlin Clark and some of the other players in the women's games, it's definitely exciting to see more people just talking about women's basketball, watching women's basketball, whatever that may be. And yeah.
Don't have much more to say about it. She's just lights out player.
Yeah. And I guess in the men's bracket, NC State has kind of just, shocked everybody.
Yep.
Nothing else that's happened has been too predictable or too unpredictable.
Yeah.
But
Alabama's a little bit of a surprise, but it's not absurd.
Not really.
It's mild surprise.
I mean, one of my friends in my bracket has them winning.
Yeah, I'm cheering for him now just because I feel like it would be entertaining if nothing else.
I think future NFL left tackle DJ Burns is going to take NC State to the promised land this year.
Future Seattle Seahawk.
Future New England Patriot.
Well, you can be wrong.
It's just it's fascinating to see how he's like 6'7", 300 pounds.
Yeah,
and had not playing football, but yet getting NFL interest in addition to, I'm assuming, NBA interest, which is what will happen when you have a tournament like this.
Oh, for sure. Well, I guess it's not unheard of to have basketball players end up at the NFL. I think that was the case with Jimmy Graham. Antonio Gates, specifically at the tight end position, I find. So it would certainly be interesting to see him make the jump to football, but if basketball is going to work out for him, then, keep doing that.
I'm curious to see how he'll do with all the physicality that there is in football, because they're talking about having him in the O-line.
Yeah.
His footwork is phenomenal. I'm absolutely believe he's capable of it. It's just, the contact of it and the injury risk. I wonder if he even bothers switching over, or if he just really tries to push for an NBA career, because with the size that he has, I could see him being like a modern Shaquille O'Neal type player, where he just, you might be like taller than him, like for example Victor Wembanyama, but you're just gonna get bullied.
Like he's just a square.
Yeah, like DJ Burns against Victor Wembanyama in a post up isn't even much of a competition. I mean, he'll have a lot to jump over.
Yeah,
but he's
it has to be a creative up and under.
He's getting to the basket without anyone stopping him.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Our last topic, because we've had so many technical difficulties, and truthfully, I just want to end this episode. Arsenal 0, Manchester City 0. Yeah, I mean, I'm an Arsenal fan, and it was hard to stay awake. The Manchester City and Arsenal both played a very LA Kings style game where they just kind of sat back, parked the bus, whatever it was. I do think Arsenal were the better team without bias. I think that they had more opportunities solely because they were able to start an occasional counterattack. I guess Erling Haaland missed that one chance that he had. He whiffed on it and just completely missed the ball. But it was just for those two teams to go 0-0, as much of an achievement as that is for Arsenal, they needed the win. So I was hoping they would play riskier, a little bit riskier.
Yeah. I'm curious what our resident Man City fan has to say about the game.
Yeah. I'm noticing a bit of a pattern where, like, Guardiola teams never seem to... There's, like, certain games a year where they don't seem to play terribly well. Like, it was always kind of the joke with Klopp and Guardiola that game could put an insomniac to sleep. And I wonder if we're starting to see that again with Arteta now, because he feels like he knows the style, so it has to be a bit more reserved.
Yeah.
And also, I wonder if Erling Haaland will ever, like... Because that was kind of the whole issue last season, was that he didn't turn up in very big games, and it cost him probably the greatest individual award in the sport.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's really weird to... I guess it does say a little bit about how Arteta is starting to figure out Pep, because this season against Man City, we've had a win and 2 draws if you include the Community Shield matchup. But at the same time, it was a 1-0 win, a 0-0, and a 1-1 that ended in penalties. I guess it's 2 wins and a draw, because one of them was a draw after extra time, but it went to pens. If he's able to hold City, that's one thing. It's just, in the future, will he be able to run like the same sort of suffocating offense that he's run against almost every other team in the Premier League at some point? Will he be able to figure that out against Man City, a team that is so good with their press?
Yeah. I'll try to keep my thoughts fairly short as a fan of neither team here. Erling Haaland is a Norwegian Andy Carroll. That was the worst game of soccer I've ever watched, and it was not football. And Liverpool top of the league. Liverpool top of the league.
I'm sorry, when's your Champions League game?
Where's your Champions League trophy?
Where's your treble?
He's got you there.
Where are your financial breaches?
Under the rug with everything else you're ignoring.
Where's your manager?
Certainly
at
not at the
Sporting
Barbie,
right now.
that's for sure.
At where?
Sporting.
Sporting Lisbon?
Yeah, we're getting Amarim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. We'll see who's laughing when Vanni Sartini is the next manager of Liverpool FC.
Me, because I've become the Joker.
And me, because I think that'll be really funny.
All right. That being said, Zach has had his editing work cut out. A lot of technical difficulties this episode.
We thought his job was too easy, so we decided to make it a little more challenging on him.
Yeah, we apologize for that. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time.
Hi, Mom.
Bye.